This is Our People podcast, telling the stories behind South Tyneside and Sunderland NHS Foundation Trust.
Hi and welcome to Our People podcast. My name's Harry Newhouse. I'm a PR apprentice here at the Trust and will be the host for today's episode. This week we will be talking with some of our Army reserves as we are joined by gastrointestinal research fellow Dr. Alexander Seager and trainee advanced clinical practitioner Alex Cairns. Welcome to the podcast, Alexander and Alex.
Hi.
Hello, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Alexander, can you tell me a little bit about your roles as a gastrointestinal research fellow here at the Trust?
My background is that I'm a surgical registrar in East Anglia, and I wanted to do some research as part of my training. So I've taken time out of training to come and do that up here in the northeast. I work here in the Trust with in the Research and Innovation Department, and my main job is to run a randomised clinical trial, which is called ColoDetect. And what that's looking at is using an artificial intelligence device, which is a little box that plugs into the endoscopy equipment, and it watches the endoscopy procedure and helps the person who's doing that procedure to identify polyps in the bowel. Polyps are little precancerous growths that we want to try and find and remove, and so the idea is that it will help us find more of them and thus reduce people's future risk of cancer. We're running a trial to see if that device actually works in routine practice. And alongside that, I'm doing a PhD with Newcastle University, which sort of my work here feeds into the PhD as well.
So you mentioned a little bit there about ColoDetect. Mm-hmm. How far through are you with that?
It's quite a big trial actually. It's about 2,000 patients that we're trying to recruit. Obviously we've had some limitations with COVID, but actually we're about halfway through. We've got to nearly 1,000, and that's doing really well. That's testament to some real effort from all of the research nurses across the 9 sites that in England who are recruiting to the study, and so we estimate we'll be finished about March, April next year, and hopefully have some exciting findings.
Oh, brilliant. And Alex, what does your role as trainee advanced clinical practitioner entail?
So mine is also a long title as well, but essentially I work in the Emergency Care Directorate at South Tyneside and Sunderland. So my role involves working at both sites in the emergency departments and the urgent care centres, and we see a wide variety of patients, adult children with a range of injuries, illnesses, and sort of see them, treat them, manage them in the same way that our doctors do. In this new role that I've sort of joined in the last 6 months, I've taken on a little bit more of a senior responsibility, so I might be in charge of a particular area of A&E in terms of managing the queues and things. But we've got a really, really good setup for our sort of emergency care directorate in terms of nurse practitioner and, as it's known as emergency clinical practitioners now. So essentially you can come in as a band 6, and then you get upskilled and trained, and you go into a band 7 and then into a band 8, where what is hoped is that you can eventually credential. So I'll be starting my masters in advanced clinical practice in February, so it'll be a 3-year course, and I've got a large portfolio that I need to complete with evidence supplied, so that I can eventually credential as a advanced clinical practitioner. But we're really quite fortunate because our department has probably got one of the best setups in the North East for training our practitioners. So we have nurses, paramedics, we've got a really, really good training team there. So our consultants, doctors, nurse practitioners all teach each other, help upskill the staff. So there's some really good opportunities for them to develop their own skills, not just clinically, but even in terms of the leadership, management. And they've got a good support system, so there's lots of education sessions that can go to internally within our department, but also externally as well, and at university. So it is good. It's a very fulfilling role.
And for that, even externally and internally, how would people be able to use? How would people sort of get into that if they wanted to?
Into this role,
Yeah.
So essentially, we take on paramedics, nurses, even physician associates, which is a different role, but essentially it involves a certain level of clinical experience which you gain over time when you qualify in your profession. You then need to do your clinical skills course. That's sort of as a minimum, essentially. After that, there's the opportunity either when you enrol to do ECG courses you're prescribing. And traditionally, once you get your prescribing your ECG course, you'd be moving up sort of the bandings and things. But yeah, it just takes, it is hard work, and it is very good, especially if you're looking to develop professionally, clinically, and in terms of your leadership and management. You see such a wide variety, particularly in our role, and especially with the pandemic. It's really been quite a change, and something we've not been used to dealing with. So everybody works really, really well across the trust in a team now, and sort of tackling all the challenges that we've been facing.
Brilliant. And alongside your jobs here at the Trust, you also give up your time to serve in the reserve forces. How does that coincide with your daily roles here at the Trust, and when did you both decide that this is the path that you wanted to take?
I decided to join the Army when I first became a surgical registrar, as I had a lot of colleagues who were either recently joined or were going through the joining process, and so I just got chatting to them about what the Army involved, really, because it was something I was very unfamiliar with. And the more I talked to them, the more I realised that I had a skill set that I could offer to somebody else, to another organisation, that they would find genuinely useful, that I could serve a different body of people, and use my skills in a different way to what I did in my civilian career. There's obviously lots of overlap, but there is also some distinct differences, and that the Army would obviously also train me to be able to deliver those skills in that different context, and that was the thing that particularly really appealed to me, because I wanted to remain quite general in my skill set rather than being too narrowly focused, and that means not just sort of surgical skills, but sort of managing medical problems in sort of more austere environments and so on and so forth, as well as gaining all the military skills, which as well as being interesting and challenging, also a lot of fun. So I realised there was very much a two-way exchange. I had something I could give the Army, but the Army could give a lot to me as well. In my civilian job, the main overlap really is particularly sort of leadership, management, organisational stuff. The Army does teach me some new clinical things as well, which do help with my career, but particularly in my current trial management role, I have to be very, very well organised, and the Army has a different take on that to a lot of civilian people. And the particular lesson that I think that stands out above all the others is actually an infantry attack planning principle, and that's concurrent activity at all levels is the way it's phrased. That means that don't just do one thing at once, try and get as many people as possible doing as many things that they can meaningfully achieve all at the same time, so that you make the best use of your time and productivity.
Really, and same to you, Alex.
So I've been in the reserves, I think it'll be about 8 years now. So I joined when I was a second year student nurse, and one of the main reasons I'd wanted to is when I'd went into nursing, I very much had sort of an interest in emergency and even pre-hospital care. And this just seems like the ideal sort of opportunity to expand on that, but also just to develop my leadership and management skills, because I knew going into nursing there were aspects that I was really going to need to bring to the table. And I think when you're studying at university and you haven't really had that life experience yet, you want to try and get all the preparation that you can. So I joined the reserves, did the training alongside it, which it was manageable and absolutely doable in my second year. Probably not in my third year, it was a bit too busy then to be doing that. But over time I've just sort of done a lot of work with 201 where me and Alexandra are based, but also in my own department as well. So the beauty of this is that some of the training that I get militarily I'm able to bring to our department. So I work on the major incident team with a couple of our consultants, with some of our senior sisters, managers and things, and I'll take part in teaching them the CBRN aspect of training. So that's essentially things like decontamination of chemical, biological patients. Well, I say patients, but patients who've been exposed to a chemical or a biological threat. And I can use the skills of what I've learned in terms of decontamination and teach the staff here, but in line with NHS local and sort of UK policies. So it's really, really great in that sort of sense. So that I find that they tie in really, really well. And for me, the way that I work it is essentially, I wouldn't say that bank job is the right word, but that's how I kind of plan my week and how I sort of tailor them both to work together. So I might go in on my day off to do some work that I need to do militarily in between my shifts. But we've also got, which I'm just in the middle of planning at the moment, we've got hopefully a clinical sort of weekend that we're hoping to put on early next year for the trust and hopefully other trusts in the North East, so that we can do some joint training together, particularly after the pandemic. I think that there was a very good cohesion between the NHS and the military during that. So I think it will be quite good in the future to sort of increase that cohesion, really.
Because I suppose, like, as a trust, we are quite supportive and encourage our staff to get involved with the Army Reserves. Because South Tyneside and Sunderland was the first NHS employer in the region to achieve the Ministry of Defence Employer Recognition and Gold Award, which I believe is the highest badge of honour available to those that employ and support those who serve, as well as veterans and their families. So how helpful have the trust been in helping you achieve your own ambitions and commitments with the reserves?
Me? I can honestly say really, really supportive. If I've ever put in a request, never had any issues getting the time off. The team in AD have been really good, the rota team, and certainly the senior managers are very supportive because they recognise that this is good for my development and I can bring some skills back to them, but also, as you say, it is a really, really good investment, and I think that in comparison to perhaps I can't speak for other trusts across the country, but I certainly know colleagues who maybe work in other areas sometimes have a little bit more trouble getting the 2-week camp off, just because of time commitments, or maybe they just haven't got the capacity to be away for 2 weeks. So they've been really excellent and very flexible, particularly if it has been last minute. If I'm already on shift, people are usually very willing to swap, which is always very helpful, and I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, similarly, I've found the trust to be, unfailingly supportive. It's nice that I very much feel that the trust recognises that this is something that's important. It's not just like a hobby or going on holiday. It's actually, this is a commitment that really means something, and the trust sort of believes in the value of that as well. So getting the time off, for example, I've just been away for 2 weeks on a course, and I used my special leave allowance for that. So the trust, as a gold award, Armed Forces Covenant, I think is the agreement, as a gold award sort of holder, they give serving reservists 2 weeks additional paid leave every year to go and do armed forces related activity. And as Alex was saying, some places, will get maybe a week. Sometimes they might have more difficulty, and any other time they'll have to make up using annual leave. But the trust here gives you a fortnight, which is 10 days, and that's really, really helpful. And similarly accommodating when that fits in your year. Again, usually very flexible. very accommodating and willing to sort of help you work around whatever other commitments you have to enable you to go and provide that service to the army, because like Alex said, they recognise that there's mutual benefit, and it really does pay dividends to the trust to let you go, as well as to the army and to you as an individual.
And I suppose that you two especially will have done a lot of stuff, a lot of activities with the reserves, and a lot of other staff from this trust will have done the same activities. So, cause, like, for example, you've recently took part in the Cataract Yomp, is that correct?
Yes,
and
our sins.
Yeah, do you want to tell us a bit about that and what happened?
Yeah, well, that was fun. Definitely what they call Type 2 fun.
Are you sure you want to use the word fun?
There's Type 1
was.
fun, which is where you enjoy it when you're doing it, and then there's Type 2 fun, which is where you think it's miserable, but then it's great afterwards. Yeah. And it's definitely Type 2 fun. The Cataract Yomp, or Cataract Yomp, I think it's supposed to be pronounced, is 56 miles across the hills of Perthshire, and the idea is that you should complete it in 24 hours. And it's all to raise money for ABF, which is a charity that supports soldiers, veterans, families of military personnel, with a variety of things like housing, social support, various other bits and bobs. They're a great charity, and they do an awful lot of work. But the Yomp was I got roped into it by someone in our unit who just sort of thought, you're young and fit. I think he was trying to compliment me to persuade me into it. So you'll be fine. And so we just kind of went for it, really. Didn't really know what to expect. My intention was just to finish it, really, because I thought I've never done anything like this before. But in the end, he persuaded us to run it, and so off we ran. And then actually we finished very successfully. It was a real surprise, but it was definitely a valuable experience, and got you to see some great scenery as well.
And was it a team sort of effort, or was it sort of you're walking and you go sort of your own speed?
It was a bit of both, really, wasn't it?
It was a bit of both, yeah. I mean, I've done this before. I think it was about 3 years ago. It was before the pandemic, and I'd walked, maybe done a little bit of jogging, but walked most of it. So I'd not let in to Alexander sort of what he was about to be doing, especially when we decided we were going to run it. So why run? Why not run instead of walk? It gets done quicker. But yeah, we basically start as a group generally and do the first, it might be 10, 15 miles together, and then you break down into pairs, and we always like to try and keep in a pair at least, just so for safety aspects and things. But we've just got people who are varying fitness levels, and it's just that little bit easier just to do that. So we'd started off initially, hadn't we, as a group. It was for Scotland, it was a particularly warm day. It was about 23 degrees.
Yeah.
And it was all day, blazing sunshine. I mean, absolutely gorgeous scenery. It was lovely. But essentially you go to 3 different checkpoints. So you've got bronze, silver and gold. So bronze is at about 22 miles, silver's 36, and then gold, which was meant to be 54, turned out to be 56. Because of there'd been a lot of trees that had been blown down, so we had to do a bit of a longer route, which I have to admit might have broke me a little bit when I got to the last 10 miles. But yeah, we just did a bit of a run, jog, run. I mean, certainly for the uphills I was walking, but the rest of it I was just running, and Alex did really, really good. Did for his first one, he came third out of about 700 people. I think I came fourth, which I wasn't going for, genuinely. It just happened. I was jogging, and before we knew it, we were kind of well along the way, weren't we? So.
Well, I think what happened was that because I didn't know how we were going to get on, it meant that I didn't push myself too hard, so I did better than I thought. I think if I thought there was a chance I was going to finish hard at the rankings, I probably would have tried to sort of go all out, and then might not have finished. So, but it teaches you a lot as well. As being a good experience. You yes, it's a thing about fitness, but actually it's a bit about resilience and teamwork and kind of, you know, strategy and things like that. You think, you know, why would you ever want to try and move that distance all in one go? And I have to say, it didn't really appeal before I did it, but having done it, I think it was very good for fitness, but also for personal development.
Okay, and were you at work on Monday, or was it one of the worst shifts?
I think
I can't remember actually. I remember it took me about 10 days to 2 weeks to recover.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But I think mostly I sit down at a desk most of the day, so it was all right.
Yeah, I was a little bit stiff getting up and walking about. I think most of the patients thought I might have been the one when I was walking around. But you know, as Alexander said, you know, a lot of people will ask me at work, why on earth would you do stuff like this? And to be honest, we've both chatted about this before and said we do like a challenge, and you really go into it thinking, this is not something I'm looking forward to, or that I maybe even am overly thrilled at starting, but you can push yourself to a level that I really think you wouldn't expect. I mean, I know that I've talked to the trust in yourselves about Cambrian Patrol, but I'll use that as an example. You know, I think I carried 37 miles, about 45 kilograms of kit, and I just thought absolutely no way. But a lot of this is mentality rather than physical fitness, which surprises people when I say it to them. But you'd be surprised how far you can actually keep going if you just have that mental grit, and you have to just talk to yourself and put the negative thoughts away. But when you've been through and done the really arduous, hard work, and then you come to work, you can bring that with you to whatever situation you might face, whether it be at work or outside, or, you know, in other aspects of life, because you think, well, not sitting in the pouring rain after 37 miles with no sleep, having carried all of this kit. So it does make you that bit more resilient, especially when you're facing challenges.
Yeah, and I suppose in your line of work, that you could see something new every day, and something could be more. You might need a bit more. Like, oh, I need to do this.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we get taught a lot of clinical skills that, to be fair, as I've mentioned, our department, we do a lot of really good training. We do a lot of trauma training with 201 Field Hospital. Got some really, really good people there, consultants, nurse practitioners, healthcare assistants, combat medical technicians, regular serving soldiers from the infantry. There's some really good people there, and they are very good at sort of passing on their knowledge to us and teaching us. So, you know, we aren't purely just, I'm not saying just because it's more than a just, but we don't go to 201 and work as a nurse and as a doctor. We have to be a soldier as well. So, you know, we learn how to treat a casualty in the middle of a contact situation where you're coming under fire. You'll learn to deal with injuries that traditionally you're probably not going to see in the NHS. And that's really useful because, as you've rightly said, sometimes you do get the unexpected, and you think, right, well, I know I've been taught this and this is what I need to do. So it is very good in that respect as well. And especially with major incident aspects, we get a lot of teaching and training on that. So all of that is great when it comes to managing challenging situations, you know, especially when it comes to team leading and coordinating things. The military are very, very good in that, and the training is designed to put you under an extreme amount of pressure and see what your limits are and how you make decisions. And if you don't maybe do the best decision, that's okay, but how can you do it better next time, you know?
Yeah, that's really true. And I think, well, I know one of the reasons that I joined the Army Reserves was because I knew that it would push me, that it would challenge me, and it would cause me to develop in ways that I probably wouldn't if I just remained in my civilian career. It put me in situations that would demand skills that I knew I didn't have, but that they would teach me, and that's definitely made me a more capable, more resilient person, you know, just personally as well as in my career.
And so you mentioned that the YOM was like raising money for IBF. I think is it the national charity for soldiers?
Yeah, it's the Army's national charity.
Yeah.
And can people still sponsor you and for what you did? And
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We'd love any money to go to the ABF, whether it's a few pennies or lots of pounds. We can probably put a link out somewhere. We've got a link to our team donation page because we sort of entered as a team, and so people could donate to us as a team or individually. We can put links. Out that they can follow, and they should be able to send us a little, send us a lot. We'd be very, very grateful.
And so for any staff listening to this and maybe considering doing the same and joining the Army Reserves, what advice would you give to them to help them start their own journey?
So I mean, I've been in the reserves for a long time. What I'll do is I'll talk a little bit about what you can get out of the reserves and what it can offer you, because I think that's really important. And we can talk a little bit about what's expected, because I know a lot of people who come to join the reserves get a bit sort of anxious about the fitness element and other aspects and commitment. So, I mean, in terms of the reserves, I've gained so much out of it. I've gained qualifications, whether it be clinical, adventure training, for example, so mountaineering qualifications. Being very fortunate, I've been able to travel to a lot of different places on whether it be a medical research expedition, overseas exercises to Nepal, Gibraltar, Italy. So, and with those expeditions or exercises, I've been very fortunate that I've been able to gain qualifications and get paid for it, which is not something that you often come across. So, when we go away for a purpose. It's to either develop you, or it's either to contribute to research or to help other nations in some way or some aspect. So there's a lot that can be done in terms of developing you clinically, but also if you're interested in doing other things that you maybe haven't tried before, the military can certainly help with that. In terms of joining, we've got a really good recruitment team, a 2-1, but the military have always got the recruitment teams at each unit, and you'll usually find some of them in the canteen here. At other trusts they'll do local talks at universities, even at colleges and hospitals and other various sites, and they're there to offer you that information if you're interested in joining. And essentially what it involves is you will require a medical assessment to join, sort of as standard. You'll need to go through a couple of phases of training. So you've got your phase 1 Alpha and Bravo, which, depending on whether you go down the officer route or the non-commissioned officer route, will be in essence of sort of 4 to 6 weeks of training before you qualify as a soldier. And because you're in the reserves, it is easy to work it around your shifts, because you can choose to do a consolidated course or you can choose to do it over weekends. There's only one course, the Bravo course, that has to be a consolidated 2 weeks, which, if you're with a trust that has a good reserve scheme like ours do, you get 10 days sort of special leave, which would allow you to go and do that. And after that, once you've qualified as a soldier, it very much comes down to, I would say, and me and Alexander were just talking about this earlier, is time management is a big thing. So, if you've got children, you've got a partner, and a busy work life, sometimes, yes, it can be a bit challenging to juggle, but it is absolutely manageable as long as you're sensible in your plan. And whatever you put into the reserves, you will get out of it. So if you have a busy few months planned clinically, you need some time to, not be so heavy on the military aspect, then that's okay. That the minimum that you've got to do is 28 days a year, and you get a 14-day annual camp, which, as I say, our trust gives you the time off where, I'm going into camp in September for a couple of weeks to complete that for this year, and there's mandatory training to do alongside that. But it does have times when, yes, it can be a bit of a juggling act, but it's in the 8 years I've been able to do that, and certainly been given more than enough notice to plan activities and my work life around it.
Yeah, I'd very much echo all of that. I think probably, sort of practically speaking, the first thing I'd say is if you know anyone who's in the reserves, it's just start having a chat with them. Brilliant.
Yeah. And the fitness, I know I get a lot of questions about the fitness aspect when people are joining the reserves, and yes, there's an expectation. You've got a standard of fitness to maintain. It's the military, you know, that has to be part and parcel of the role. But what I would say to anyone who's thinking of joining, it's absolutely achievable. You know, the standards are set the same for male and female now, and I still achieve them, you know, and I mean, not that anybody can say me, but I'm only 5 foot and I still carry and do the same stuff that Alexander would be asked to do for the fitness tests. So it takes a little bit of work. You know, there's a fitness that you have to maintain, but it's not something by any means that is out of reach. We've certainly got reservists who work here, you know, particularly who've been in here for a long time. Some that are almost even nearing retirement age in our unit, and they still do an incredible job of maintaining fitness and getting the targets. So just please don't let that put you off.
I actually find that it helps me with my fitness, because you know, the unit provides opportunities to help you get fit, and specifically to guide you in your training to make sure that you can pass the assessments fine.
Thank you very much, Alexander and Alex, for joining us and taking the time out of your day to speak with us.
Thank you.
And thanks for having us. Yeah.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of our People podcast. We hope you enjoyed it, and check out our other stories. Hit subscribe to keep up with the latest and catch up with what we've been up to on our Twitter, Facebook and Instagram pages. Just search for our name.